Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast. 2 games played in the last 5 days. In the last week, we'll go with. 2 home games, Watford first and foremost midweek, and then a weekend game at home to Middlesbrough. 2 very contrasting games, 2 very contrasting results, and 2 very contrasting talking points as well. Starting with the first game, Michael, because, quite frankly, there's less to talk about that one. There is the second one, of course, so we'll keep this bit short. But Watford obviously struggled so far this season, near the bottom of the table, and I think they still are, because I don't think they got too much out of the game that they played at the weekend, but I could be wrong on that.
They drew 1-1 at Cardiff, I think.
Yeah. So they are still very much down there at the moment, but like I keep saying in pretty much every podcast that we do at the minute, doesn't really matter where you are on the table at this point. Although it's not good to be 20th at any stage in the season. But with it being a home game, Watford, like I say, a team struggling, probably wanting a point out of that game, and that's the type of team that Sunderland usually struggle against. That was a good win against Watford first and foremost.
Definitely was. I mean, if you want to look at it in another context, like last season when we played them twice, we drew 2-2 both times and needed late equalisers to get a point in both games. Granted, to be fair, the game down at Vicarage Road felt like a win because at that point Watford had just come down, we'd just come up. But then obviously you look at the home game where we went 2-0 down against a team like when Watford had nothing to play for then, and Patrick Roberts, we had to score 2 goals in the last 20 minutes, including a screamer from Patrick Roberts. So in this particular game, it was one where Watford fans were adamant before the game that we were going to end up winning and winning quite comfortably, and it ended up panning out that way. I think the first 40 minutes in that game, I've said it before, that I thought was a little bit flat. I don't know, it was just something about it felt off to me. But once we went ahead, it was pretty much not one-way traffic, but we were in control. I didn't really feel that Watford were really going to get back into the game, which I was kind of surprised by, because I figured they would have started a bit better than they have done. But it won't be long before the head coach gets sacked, because nearly everybody gets sacked there.
Yeah. And obviously, like I say, Kyle, we're going to keep this bit short because there's not much to talk about the second game. But Niall Huggins obviously got a goal in that game. And, the narrative around that is, he's had such a long time out injured. He deserves a break. And obviously, he's gone and get himself injured again in this game. And how long he's out for, I don't know. But let's pretend we don't know that he got injured in that game and look at the Watford game in particular. Obviously, Serkin got injured a few weeks ago. Huggins came in. And he's played well in every game that he's played, and I think that's his first senior goal. Obviously, he's struggled for appearances this year. Like I say, I think he spent 2 years out injured. But granted, like I said, he's injured now, but it'll be a good boost for him to get that goal and another performance under his belt and another good performance as well.
Right, it was a fantastic goal as well. Really good skill, and I love just kind of the like the toe poke just right in the top of the net. That was fantastic. So, yeah, and it's just you feel for obviously now knowing what's since happened, but yeah, he's come in. He's had to come in due to other injuries in that position, which we just seem to have kind of a carousel of injuries there. But anyone who has come in has really stepped up and really filled that spot well. And I've been really impressed with Niall Huggins. You can see why. Leeds originally had him, why we wanted to pick him up as well. Really quick player, really good ball skills. I mean, even defensively, he's tracked back well. He's defended well. He really has not put a foot wrong. It was great to see that goal. And it really did also come at a good time, because to Michael's point, Watford, they usually come and fight for everything. That goal came right before the half. And, it leads you to believe that, if we weren't able to break through and get that goal, going into the half 0-0 is a lot different from Watford's perspective, and probably would have found a way to make the game just even wetter and uglier than it looked on my computer when I was watching it. But yeah, that goal coming from Niall Huggins, I do feel for him, and it's just the injury bug is starting to kind of rear its head again. But hopefully we're getting some other players back here soon and whatnot. But yeah, I'd love to see that from Huggins, and it was a really good goal as well.
Yeah. Abdul Bar gets the other goal in that game, Michael, and for someone who must be about 5'8", 5'9", I think he is. Yeah, I don't know his stats behind it, but he seems to win a lot of headers, and obviously that's where this goal comes from. Ball in the box, Job at the back post, heads it back over to Abdullah Bar, and he's again another player that didn't have the best kind of start in a Sunderland shirt when he arrived from. I can picture the badge.
It's not Leon. Is a French club?
It is a French club, and it's like a light blue, dark blue badge.
Is that Leon? Is it?
That's the same team that Marvin's Kante came from.
Well, either way, I'll try and save your blushes a bit. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Abdullah Bar very quickly on him. It's one where I feel a little bit for him because he's obviously in sort of what is he? Have we a class that he's a number 10 or a winger now? Because either way, last season when you had Jack Clarke, you had Patrick Roberts, you had Ahmad there. He wasn't really going to break into the team ahead of them, was he? So I think he's kind of had to bide his time a little bit. But I think to get a goal, he certainly deserved it, and just for the way that he leaped for the header, because as you said, he's compared to some other players in the Championship, he's probably a midget, but he's able to jump up and win a ball and actually head it in.
There's actually a picture of him, like obviously of that header, and he seems to be about 2 foot off the ground when he actually heads the ball, which is.
Wow. He must have some leap on him then.
He does. He does.
Le Havre is
That's the one.
club.
Yeah, I can picture it. It's light blue, dark blue.
Cracking
Kyle
badge
saved
too.
the day there. What a legend.
Yeah.
It's got like a dragon with a crown. That's a sweet badge.
It's one of the best academies in France, I think.
Yeah.
Like I say, Kante came through there. I think Pogba, Mahrez, Abdullah Bar, obviously the next big thing in football, of course. But that game finishes 2-0. There'd be a lot more to talk about if the second game that we're going to get on there didn't have so much to talk about instead, but it does. And don't know where to start, really, in terms of...
This is going to be fun.
What to actually talk about, but what we will say is before anything happened in the game, it was an even game and a good game of football for anyone that was watching it on Sky as a neutral, even if you're a Sunderland fan, even if you're a Boro fan. It was two teams going at it, two teams who were good on the ball, good off the ball, and I think Sunderland kind of first 47 minutes of the game had the best chances of the game, Michael.
Yeah, well, this was a game where I felt Boro started. If we're talking just about the first 47 minutes before we get onto the lovely topic of referees later on, but if you're looking at just the first 47 minutes, I think that Boro started the better, but keeping more of the ball, showing a bit more intensity. But I think gradually as the half started to go on, Sunderland started to really come into the game. And yeah, I agree with you. I think we had the better of the chances. There was one where Boro had where I think they had a shot at the back post, which either might have deflected off Patterson and off the post out for a corner. But that side, I felt Sunderland's chances were better. I mean, the obvious one is when Patrick Roberts from the same side of the pitch that Niall Huggins made his run to score in the Watford game. He basically runs through half of the Boro defence or half of the Boro team and shoots at Dieng. And although Dieng made an important save, it was more or less straight at him, I think.
Yeah. And obviously with Roberts as well, though, like I think there'll be people that listen to this that maybe aren't Sunderland fans. I don't know, to be honest. But I think most of them will be.
I think in terms of a few Boro fans listening, but yeah,
probably. But in terms of players that not just Sunderland have had, but in terms of players that I've seen at the Stadium of Light or at an away game wherever I've been to, barring obviously top players. I mean, I've seen Messi play, I've seen Neymar play, and players like that, Hazard. Aside from them top world-class players, I think Roberts on the ball in terms of ball control, in terms of dribbling, close control, is one of, if not the best player I've seen, certainly at Sunderland. And the downside of his game is his end product. Because I think, in terms of goals and assists, I don't think he's ever had a particularly great season in terms of numbers. And, we talk about that chance there where, I think he's about 10 yards out. No defender really near him, keeper in the middle of the goal, and he has to finish that. Obviously changes the game completely if that does, because, ifs, buts and maybes, but the rest of that half obviously pans out very differently, and we'll get onto that. But there was another chance, I think it was against, don't know who it was against, I'm not going to try and think who it was against, but where, he probably should have scored. And if Roberts does, obviously I think he's 24, 25 now, so he's still got time to improve his game. If he does improve that part of it, he's going to be one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league. And, with Man City that have held on to him for, I think it was about 6-7 years after they paid quite a lot of money to sign him from Fulham, you can see why that they're kind of stuck with him for so long. But like I say, it's just that end product that he needs to improve.
Well, that's the thing. But the thing I always make the argument of is, if Patrick Roberts' end product was really, really good, would he be playing in the Championship?
Yeah.
That's probably the main reason why we've still got him, because is someone, as you're right, in terms of a dribbler and actually carrier of the ball, I think Patrick Roberts is one of the best I've seen play for Sunderland. But again, as you said, his numbers for his quality is quite poor when you actually look at it. I mean, I think last season, if I'm right, I think he only got something like 5 goals across the whole, 46 games. I don't know how many of them he might have missed or anything. But off the top of my head, he scored 3 times against Reading across the 2 games, scored the equaliser against Watford, and I'm sure there's another goal that he ended up scoring that I'm probably going to end up missing out. But point is, he is someone who Wigan was the other one. But he's got a lot of quality in terms of carrying the ball. But again, it's just his assists or goals even. It's just
with nine games into this season, he doesn't have a contribution yet, not a direct contribution.
No, I mean, obviously, we're not saying that he's obviously a crap player, because he's obviously not. He's got something about him. I mean, we always talk about assist before the assist. Roberts probably, although they don't have that registered in terms of numbers, Roberts is quite important in that regard. But I mean, I can't really take it away from him. That chance yesterday has got to be 1-0. I mean, I know Boro fans said Dieng again made a good save, but I felt that, looking back at it, I might need to watch it again, but I felt it was more or less straight at him. I think I'm disappointed that Roberts didn't score it, or at least like square to bar or something. But yeah, I mean, I like Roberts, but there's also another thing you got to remember is that we might not have him for too much longer, because we've obviously still got that contract situation rumbling on in the background. And my gut instinct tells me that, again, I think if we don't agree a contract with him, we'd probably sell him in January anyway, which would be a shame, but hopefully he gets tied down.
Just looking at his stats now, and I think he's played 74 times for Sunderland, 7 goals, 8 assists. That's 15 goal contributions in near enough 75 games, which works out at like what, a goal contribution every 5 games, I think that is. When one of the main vocal points of a team is, not taken away from him as a player, because like we say, he is, I still think he is one of the best players in the league in terms of what he does do, but is a poor return. And I think his best return was at Celtic, where he's got, I think, 44 goal contributions in a similar amount of games. That's like 30 less contributions in a Sunderland shirt, and obviously a lot of them games also in League One. But let's talk about Roberts, because we talk about the first 47 minutes of that game, Kyle, where it's an even game, it's a good game, it's, end to end, 2 good defensive teams, 2 good attacking teams, 2 good possession teams, and then Daniel gets sent off. The first foul, I haven't really seen too much. I didn't think it was a foul from when I seen it in the first place. Obviously, you will have been watching on Sky, so you'll have seen it better when you'll have seen replays of it. But he gets booked for that, which, quite a few people around me at the time didn't think was even a foul, never mind a yellow. And then in about the 47th, 40th minute, actually after the amount of added time that was alleged, obviously it's a minimum, so it doesn't really matter. But Trey Hume makes a tackle, ball goes off the goal kick, and this is about 10 seconds after Clark is fouled. Not maybe fouled, he is fouled. Daniel, from about 25 yards away, goes to the referee, it's a fucking foul, which is a natural reaction in a game of football. Never mind at, top level in England across professional leagues. And he gets a second yellow for that, which I said to people at the time, if you start booking people for saying stuff like that, or for saying a swear word from 25 yards that's not directed at you, but sort of with you in terms of the referee, every game would end with about 5 players on the pitch.
Right, and maybe that's what the refs want when it's all said and done. They'd rather ref a 5-a-side game than these big ones. But just for a little context too, these early games are tough. It's the game starts at 5:30 a.m. for on a Saturday. Not ideal. My strategy for these is I usually set my alarm for 6, because if I wake up about 6, I'm still half asleep. If I look at the score, if it's out of hand, I'm like, I'm just gonna sleep this one off. But this one, turn it on. I get up about 6 o'clock. I'm like, man. I even said to myself, as I remember seeing 46 or 47 on the clock going into the halftime, thinking like, this is a great game. Like, both teams can't come to play, because we've seen it, right? We just saw it a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of games ago, when teams just show up and have no desire to actually play, and they're just going to put everyone behind the ball. But credit to Middlesbrough, it was a great game, I thought, for the most part. Yeah, there were some calls here and there. I'm sure we'll get to the quote unquote, the penalty decision, or the quote unquote big quote unquote the Daniel should have had a red card earlier decision, which is just ridiculous in my opinion. But for the most part, thought it was a great game. And Sky didn't even show the red card happening. It just showed kind of the kerfuffle, so to speak, afterwards of people in their face and whatnot. And I've seen some clips, and I get it when it's. I understand the rules and the changes that they wanted to make in the beginning of the season, saying, hey, we got to kind of lay off the refs a little bit from the players' perspective, like kind of keep it to the captains, right? The captains are the ones you typically have kind of the access to the ref. You can't crowd the ref. You can't charge the ref. Whatever. At least from the replays I saw, it did not seem as though Dan Neil did anything outside of just kind of walk towards him, move towards him a little bit with his arms out type of thing. And
he went from 25 yards away from him to 20 yards away from him. And
right.
Like I say, we know what he said, allegedly. And apparently that's what the referees actually told the managers, that's what he said. So I don't even think it's a case of, this is what Dan Neil said, do you trust it or not? Apparently that's what the referees told Mowbray, and that's what he said. But he just seems to, obviously he's done this in a game before, the referee, who I think it's Gillett, I think he's called, obviously.
Yep.
It was the, he'll remember,
that
Michael.
Was it Southampton Wolves last season? Or
it was, Lamina from Wolves, where, there's 2 or 3 players crowd him, and then Lamina slowly walks over and gets booked for it. But I'll come to you again on this one, Michael. It's just not a yellow card.
But you know what, right? At the time, well, first of all, I'll quickly touch on the first yellow card, for context. I actually disagree. I thought the first yellow card was a yellow card. I know some Boro fans were adamant it was a red. I disagree with that. I don't think it's anywhere near strong enough to be a red, but I do think there was definitely context for it to be a yellow. But the reason I bring that up is because it depends on the rule. What do the rules define as dissent now? Is it
that's the point? It depends what you want to class as. Yeah.
Sorry?
That's the main I suppose talking point. That's one of the main factors is questioning a decision, dissent. Like, did he even question it? Like, it's such a weird scenario because he hasn't went, oh ref, you're a fucking idiot, yeah, blah blah, this, that, and the other. He's literally said that's a foul, which is, people, obviously it's different, but people watching at home will go, that's a foul. It's a natural reaction in football that if someone gets fouled and it doesn't get given, you'll say that's a foul.
Is this what the referee has said that Dan Neil said? Is this from the referee telling us this?
I mean, I'll try and find the tweet. Well,
because from what I've understood, I heard that was from Daniel and Tony Mowbray's perspective. So I'm trying to say, if that is what if that was what Gillett said that Daniel said to him, then that's stupid to send him off for that. But my point is, the point I'm going to make is that with Dan Neil, from his perspective, you could argue that it's a bit idiotic because he's on a yellow, he's on a tightrope, and this referee was clearly dying to send someone off. You could tell the way that he was strolling about the game, trying to make it about himself, and the old typical cliche of giving the referee a decision to make. I've got other bigger issues with Gillett's performance, if I'm being totally honest, than this one. But if you're looking at it that way, then yeah, I mean, whichever one of you guys said it, I think it was you, Josh, that if you're going to send someone off for saying it's a fucking foul, then like Kyle said, like you both said before, it's going to be 5-a-side. It's not going to be 11-a-side on 11-a-side pitch, is it? It's going to end up being 5-a-side. So this is starting to get really ridiculous. The thing that annoyed me more than anything else was the fact that Dan Neil gets a yellow card for that. Okay, you can argue it was stupid with him being on a yellow, but then the foul on Clark about 10 seconds before, okay, if Dan Neil's saying that's not a fucking foul's a yellow card, then that foul that we should have got on Jack Clark's definitely a yellow card. Coburn, I know you want to get onto this, but Coburn catching Dan Ballard in the face is a red card. So again, it's a lack of consistency, but yeah, it's just baffling.
The last thing I'll mention on this, because I'm sure it could go on forever, but I guess the theory that I'm making up is that the ref kind of, there's a lot going on toward the end there. The ref heard just a player coming after him, right? Naturally, he's like, okay, if this is dissent, I'm going to pull out, give him a yellow card, go about his way. And then he realized, like, oh shit, or, Daniel already has a yellow card. And then as he's pulling out that yellow, he realizes, oh, this can be red. I don't think the ref intended to in that split moment. I don't think he intended to send Daniel off. I think he forgot that he had a yellow card to begin with, and then as he's pulling it out, he's like, "Well, no going back now." And that's the only explanation I can think of, is that he just did not realize that in that split moment, which there's a lot going on. That
to be fair, you might be right though, because on the replays when I've watched it back, doesn't he pull the second yellow card, and then about 5 seconds later, then he pulls the red card?
Right.
So it means that he doesn't pull. Well, you might know this better, Cal. He doesn't pull the red card straight away, does he? He puts the yellow card up. Little what's the one I'm looking for? Pause happens, and then it's the red. I mean, in the ground, we didn't. I mean, all I saw was a crowd started to get really edgy, or started to get annoyed, and then I saw a red, and I didn't realize it was Dan Neil. But I can kind of get what you mean. It's one where I don't know. Again, it's the problem is if you're booking him just for the sake of dissent, then you open up, and for what he said, then you're opening up a huge can of worms there. Not only for every time a player swears either at or with a referee or in the direction of a referee, but not at him, or with things that are perceived to be worse than what Dan Neil did, but then don't get booked.
I think one thing that people need to take into consideration as well, which we'll never find out, obviously, but for all we know as well, and this isn't, defending the referee because he was shit for the entire game, but, that, to look at it from the other side, that could have been the 5th or 6th time that Dan Neil said that, in the first half, where
True.
That could have, the ref might have said on the 3rd time, right, you've only been booked. If you keep doing this, I'm going to book you. He does it again. The ref's like, right, this is your last warning. And then Dan Neil does it again and sends him off. And then, that's the part that you'll never know.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's why referees, I've said this for a while, and lots of people said this for a while, should be interviewed after a game and be like, every big decision in a game, they should be forced to explain. Because if the referee comes out after that game and says, right, I warned Neil 5 times after he'd already been booked not to, question every decision that's been made, then people would probably take a different stance on it. Be like, yeah, fair enough, Neil's a bit stupid there. He's been told not to do it. I see why he's done it. But you'll never know that side of it. But moving on from that, because about 10 seconds later, a red card is not given for something that, well, I'm going to say could have been a red card, but it should have been a red. The ball goes up in the air, comes towards Ballard. Corbin leads with his elbow, which I think is a red. Straight. It has no intent of playing the ball. He leads with an elbow, which, again, talking about VAR, if someone looked at that, it's probably given as a straight red for violent conduct. But even if it's not, it's a yellow card at the minimum. Which that then leads to the half-time whistle being blown, and Ballard squares up to him, and Corbin squares up to him, and Ballard gets booked for doing that, and Corbin does as well. Which means the referee, you can see it on Sky when they watch it. The ball goes up, he stops watching the game, blows for half-time, and then he realises what's happened. So I think he's kind of missed it as well, and I think the officials have missed it because of how close it was to the half-time break. But he should have been off, Kyle.
Yeah, and like I said, this just goes to the overall frustration of, and I think just going back to it as well, it's, God, if we're going to have a player sent off, like, I would have been just rather sent off like Dan Neil for, the tackle that Boro fans wanted to get a red card. It's just the layer of dissent and being such an objective decision makes everything else after that become so much more frustrating because there's just no consistency to it anymore. And yeah, he went and gave both players a yellow and things like that. But I don't know. It really just, like I said, it took what was going to be probably a really, really fun second half.
It spoiled it, didn't it?
It just spoiled it. Yeah, especially for me. I was hanging out my ass, just so tired, and watching this pile of garbage in the second half. It was so frustrating. But anyways,
it's not you've ruined it, but it's decided the game as well, Michael. Because you can look at games, you'd be like, yeah, can Sunderland do something with 10 men there? But if there's one team that they haven't had a good start of the season, obviously they're still in the bottom half. But if there's one team, well, a couple of teams really, but if there's a couple of teams you don't want to go down to 10 men against, you're probably saying Southampton, Middlesbrough up there, because Carrick, possession-based football, and they will use the extra man to their advantage, and that's exactly what they did in the second half. And there's a few other things that we'll talk about in the second half, but aside from refereeing, kind of back to performance, the performance from Sunderland in that second half was absolutely shocking. And yes, we had 10 men. Yes, you lose a midfielder, and yes, you're bringing on an attacking midfielder to play the role of essentially a hold midfielder. And it is going to make it harder. It's going to make it obviously easier for Middlesbrough, and Middlesbrough are going to have more of the ball, more of the game, and probably look the better team. But the way Sunderland just seemed to absolutely collapse after half time is can't be overlooked.
No, absolutely can't, and that's something I think we should be consistent with. That we've still got to give accountability for the fact that, if you look at, I only this morning have I actually seen the fourth goal back, because I couldn't be bothered to look at it back, because by the time the fourth goal happened live, I'd zoned out, basically.
Still haven't seen the fourth goal, and I don't plan on seeing it. So
yeah, it's not great. It's basically a shot, and then Patterson saves it and Force scores into an empty net, basically. But it's the first goal, to be fair, from Greenwood. We'll get onto another conversation because he shouldn't have been on the pitch really either. But point is, that's a good finish. I'll give Greenwood that. The first goal's a good finish. If that was Sunderland, I'd be saying that. But you look at the second and third goals, absolutely all over the place defensively. Crooks.
I'll stop you there as well, because if we're going to go back to the refereeing debate, the third goal's offside as well.
Oh,
Miles too. Also true. Yeah. I mean, well, okay. One last thing I'll quickly mention on the referees, in case there are any Boro fans listening to this, because there probably will be. The one thing I'm starting to get very sick of from Boro fans when they argued, well, Dale Fry got sent off last season, which wasn't a red card. No, let's get this crystal clear. Dale Fry's red card last season was a red card. It was last man denying a goal scoring opportunity. I can understand the argument that a penalty shouldn't have been given in that game, but for me, it was a straight red card. I don't know how this is a debate, to be honest. But the point is, the frustrating thing comes from, if you're going to agree that Dan Neil's second yellow was a yellow, then Boro should have had at least 2 red cards across the game. Because the incident you referred to, we're going back on referee, but we can't not. But you look, I asked in the group chat that we're in that what minute was it on sealed? The challenge from Sam Greenwood. Yeah, and apparently you said he was already on a yellow at that point. Is that correct?
For dissent as well. Yeah.
Right. Well, if that's the case, then so if you're going to give Dan Neil the second yellow for dissent, and you've already given Sam Greenwood a yellow card for dissent, then can someone please explain to me how that challenge on Jensen Seal is not warranted a second yellow card? Because wasn't it 0-0 still at that stage?
Would have been, yeah.
I'm sure it would have been. So that in itself can re-alter the game and make it attempt to make it a contest again. And in that case, no. So in that sense, no, I do actually feel a bit cheated here, and I'm getting more pissed off thinking about it, even when I thought I'd calmed down. But Greenwood shouldn't have been on the pitch. Coburn shouldn't have been on the pitch. So I don't get what Boro fans are when they say that. And this is one thing I need to get this rant out of my system. So apologies that I'm going to bore you to death with it, but I'm getting so fed up of this idea that every time you lose a game and you mention the referee, and you dare to mention it, even when they've been crap, it's, oh, you're bitter. Oh, it's always the ref's fault. Oh, you mention them every time you get beat. That is absolute bollocks. Because I've mentioned referees before when we have won games. There was a couple of games that I'm sure even on this very podcast we've mentioned referees when we've won games as well. Go back through and listen to them. It's
been a massive. It's not just this game either.
When you lose.
Yep. It's not just this game either, because the referees just this weekend have seemed to be a massive talking point as well. Because you've got I don't know if you've seen it because it was only recent, but in the Man City women's game, they had I think it was 27 minutes in.
Yes.
They've had a player sent off for daring to take 15 seconds to take a free kick. Someone questioned that decision, also got booked for it. Again, it's set 27 minutes in. Obviously, I don't know too much about women's football. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I imagine Man City aren't the type of team that would time waste after 27 minutes. There's going to be some free kicks, some throw-ins, some corners where you might not take it straight away, and it's not down to the fact you want to waste time or you're cheating or this, that, and the other. It's the whole point of having a free kick is to try and gain an advantage from it. And if there's no immediate advantage within 5 seconds to play that ball to a teammate, you might take an extra 5-10 seconds to take it, just to see who's out there, see who's there. But that was another one, and I think it was Stephen Humphreys on Twitter. Obviously, he plays for Wigan now in League One. Even he quoted the tweet about Sunderland's Dan Neil getting sent off, and what he said is, don't disagree with referees in today's game. The majority will refuse to listen to what you have to say or just card you for even daring to question their decision, even if you know their decision is wrong. You have to stay quiet and comply when they better officiate badly. And apparently he was booked. This is what he says. Again, this is one of the cases where, whether you want to trust what a footballer says or not, but apparently he was booked on Tuesday night for asking the linesman, how is that their ball?
Yeah, well, yeah. Then there you go. Look, don't get me wrong. I mean, to flip it, to kind of be a little bit devil's advocate here, I understand how difficult a job refereeing must be. You must have a certain strength of character to be able to do that. I certainly wouldn't be able to do it. But again, when did this become a thing? When criticizing or daring to voice an opinion about the referee is an illegal criminal offence? I don't get it. It honestly feels like
they should just be arrested. Screw the yellow card. They should just be arrested on the spot. If they want to make change, that's how you do it.
Kyle, you're half joking, but I wouldn't rule it out in the future. It baffles me completely. And you get some people that slag off anyone who dares to say, hang on, I thought the referee was out of line there. If you want to flip it the other way and say decisions we've got over the years that have been baffling, ever since the first year we dropped into League One, if you remember, the Bradford game on Boxing Day, Bradford had a clear as day goal that should have been given over the line, somehow wasn't given, and you could argue that cost them staying in League One in the end. So, we've been the benefit of absolutely horrendous and shocking decisions. The Rotherham game this very season, the referee was shocking. He was awful that game and all. So, when are we going to get to a point when you're not going to get slagged off every 5 minutes for saying, hang on, the referee wasn't very good? Yes, you can say, and like you said earlier, we've got to make it clear that Sunderland's performance in the second half wasn't good enough. But if anyone's trying to argue, however bad we were second half, that it was not heavily factored into by what happened before half-time with the red card, and when that didn't have a significant outcome on the result, then in my opinion, your head's in the clouds, because that is just nonsense.
We just need, there's nothing will ever be done about it. But, again, Sunderland, I do think the referee decided the game, and I think Sunderland have lost the game because of a wrong red card. Two wrong red cards.
Let me ask you two this. Do either of you think 11v11 we lose that game?
Not 4-0. If we were going to lose, it might have been 1-0.
I don't like. But if you're going to base it on the first half, Sunderland were a better team. 11v11.
Because I think the biggest, obviously, going a man down there's just a numerical advantage. It's one thing, but it's not only that. But as soon as I see Jack Clark, probably our best attacking player, defending in our own box, consistently, that's really where, and I'm sure we'll get onto that, because a lot of people think Mowbray got it wrong, and it's just like, okay, well, what can you really do in a lot of situations? But I think that was the biggest thing outside of just being down a man. It'd be different if we could maintain our shape, but we just weren't able to due to, I don't know, injury maybe or things like that. But I thought as soon as I saw Jack Clark getting just roasted multiple times by Jones, who was actually, I thought Jones was fantastic for Middlesbrough.
He was probably man of the match for me as well.
He was definitely egging the crowd on it. Lots of things like that, which you don't like to see, but at the same time, you know what? Good on you.
Yeah,
embarrass our defenders multiple times, but. It was Jack Clark, which, God bless him, he's an amazing player. I would not categorize him as defensive. He hustles, at least on defense. But, yeah, it was more so that we just had players so out of position due to necessity that anytime they attacked, it was almost always down that side. And it was just, Jones was just absolutely torturing us.
Yeah. Obviously, we've covered, the decisions that kind of changed the game or impacted the game. But there's so many other things in that game that just demonstrate the issue with refereeing, not just in the Championship, not just in this game, but in the league. And you've got, there was one on Jack Clark in the first half where if Clark goes down, he gets the free kick. There was an advantage played. Player gets booked. Clark doesn't go down. Advantage gets played. Player doesn't get booked because it was an advantage. Which doesn't make any sense.
He must have forgotten about it. He has to have done. That's the only thing I can think of that makes sense.
It seems to happen a lot where I might have generally been in the Watford game where there was an advantage played for foul as well, and then he doesn't go back and book them. And I don't know whether it's a case of referees just don't like booking them players when they haven't actually given them a free kick for it. But there's one yellow card that should have been given, and I think that was I think it was the right back that fouled him, which again, it doesn't impact the game too much, but that was quite early in the game. Jack Clark, 11v11, up against their right back. If he's on a yellow card, it changes things slightly. Crooks made, I think, 4 fouls in the game, ended the game without a yellow card. Roberts makes 1 foul, which is identical to the one that was on Clark in the first half and gets booked for it. And, a lot of these bias aside are obviously, heavily targeted towards Sunderland's, in a bad way towards Sunderland because they have affected Sunderland. But it wasn't even just that. There's some decisions that went our way that should never be going our way. I mean, you look at some of the cards that Boro should have picked up that didn't, some of the fouls that should have been given that didn't. 2 dives in the box from Middlesbrough players as well that went unpunished. But, there's a foul. I say there's a foul. There's not a foul on Abdel-Bar when he's, I think 2-on-1 in the first half. He goes down under no contact whatsoever, gets a free kick, and their player gets booked for it. So it's not just a case of, we lose a game, referee bad, this, that, and the other. It's just the refereeing every game, every league, every week is just terrible, and it's usually just across the game as well. Like I said, there's decisions that Middlesbrough should have got that they didn't, and things need. I've said this before, but former professional footballers should either be turned into referees in a way, or
force them
at least be in charge of referees, because the people who are officiating games now quite clearly do not have previous history in football. They don't know how the game works. They don't know what constitutes as a foul, what doesn't constitute as a foul, what a footballer knows what gets said on the pitch. A referee wouldn't, because they haven't played it. They don't know the intensity of it. And, again, that comes back down to the Dan Neil yellow card, where footballers know that's going to happen in every single game across the country, across the world, across the divisions, whereas referees are going to start booking them for dissent. And like I say, I'm kind of rambling on here, but it does need a change.
Well, and that's what's so funny too, because for the last couple of years, probably last decade or so, before even VAR was implemented, and a lot of money was spent on it to essentially, protect the referees in a case, saying like, hey, you're going to make mistakes, and VAR is going to kind of be there to, clean up certain opportunities and things like that, and just try to make it a more fair game. But we just saw VAR with Liverpool Tottenham, not to get too much in, Premier League and things like that, but made the most baffling mistake I've ever seen. And then they tried to defend it. They tried to defend this VAR decision, which was just so incorrect. And it was just down to miscommunication. It's been talked about and things like that. But how are you then going to implement a system and then say, oh, well, it's too expensive to implement all the other leagues as well because of X, Y, Z. But also it's not perfect. And it's like, if that's coming from, I don't know where the funding comes from it either, but it's just like, what are we doing here? It's just ridiculous. And so, my question would be, and maybe this discussion for another pod, especially now that we had the international break, but what's the solution here? Because it's like, how can referees be graded on performance, or should there be promotion and relegation for referees? Is there promotion and relegation for referees? I know there's like some sort of report card system for them, but I mean, at the end of the day, something has to be done, but there's also just not a very big pool of these insane individuals who want to referee at this level. But yeah, I digress. Yeah, it's just, I think that's what's frustrating. We hear a lot of the complaints. VAR was supposed to be the solution. That's obviously not even the solution anymore. So what
VAR
is?
only works if the officials know what they're doing. If they don't know what they're doing in the first place, then it's just going to reiterate that they don't know what they're doing.
And that's where I think the former football, in that little VAR office, right? Because they have that little room, and that's where they're watching it. There should be two former football players, defender, attacker, whatever, and they should be in there, and they should be the ones with that rep, just being like, this is my opinion, this is that, and then you got to have majority, 2/3, and I don't know, who knows? It's just frustrating, and I hate
it's
just
like sorry, Cal, but
yeah.
it's like that thing you mentioned before in the Tottenham Liverpool game. It's not like that decision with the Luis Diaz goal. It's not like a one where it was wrong, but it's subject to interpretation. It's blatantly wrong. Like it was, it's objectively beyond all reasonable doubt the incorrect decision. And it's the fact that these sometimes these referees or VAR officials or whoever else, they seem so reluctant to admit they made a mistake, and that's where. And as wrong as it is, that's where, for me, a lot of the disrespect comes from. Because if you're refusing to admit that you're wrong and you're stubbornly defending wrong decisions, then where's the respect going to come into it that referees want and to some degree probably deserve? Because as I said before, refereeing is such a hard damn job that. But the problem you've said before is that, with what's going on, with the standard of referees getting worse, it's going to be a repetitive cycle where referee standards get worse, more people get frustrated, more abuse gets hurled at the referee, less qualified refs even than them then start to referee games, and the cycle continues all over again to the point where this quality just gets worse and worse and worse because of it. And here's another thing that I think should probably get brought up. I think the lines officials now escape a hell of a lot of criticism compared to the referees, because like Josh said before, Middlesbrough's to cut it back onto the game, Middlesbrough's third goal was offside, and I don't blame Gillett for not spotting that. How the hell did the linesman not see it?
I know it doesn't
really impact the result. I know it doesn't impact the result at that point. But how does
linesmen are also almost at this stage in football the most pointless part of the game, I think, because they don't give fouls. Right. They don't give fouls. They're there to give offsides and throw-ins, and 9 times out of 10 they get them wrong.
They do give the fouls occasionally, right? They'll wave the flag if it's kind of right.
Usually, but it's not a foul. There was one in the first half.
That's what I was just going to say.
I think it was in the first half where it was on. Was it the first? Yeah, it was right on the left corner of Middlesbrough defending, where you don't think there was a single bit of contact. Players just fell over on the ball. Linesman is half a yard away from it, and I think the linesmen especially, as soon as a player goes down, they feel bad not to give a foul. You'll go and watch, there's obviously went bad time this podcast out, the game's being played, but whatever game's on TV next, go and watch it and see how many times a linesman flags for foul that there's barely any contact, if any at all. And I reckon every game will have at least 10 of them. because linesmen just seem to, again, just have a misunderstanding of what constitutes as a foul, what is enough contact to make a player go down. And yeah, anyway, we'll leave it there for refereeing.
The offside was pretty bad though, because even in that photo I sent you,
yeah,
I understand the linesman should always be in line, obviously, with our last defender. He was ahead of the attacking player.
Yeah,
like he was ahead of the Middlesbrough player by like a step or two, and I'm like, how do you?
Well, again, this is what I said on Twitter to someone. It's not, referees are going to make mistakes. If they didn't make mistakes, then they're not human. But the mistakes that are being made aren't mistakes down to like a physical element. I can't think of the best way to explain it, but you know, if a player misplaces a pass, it's a mistake. He didn't do anything wrong mentally or in preparation for that to make that mistake. But for example, like Kyle says there, the offside, if the linesman does what he's supposed to do, which is be in line with the last defender, he probably gives that as offside. But that mistake originates from the referee or the linesman or the official or whoever it is not doing what they should have done in the first place. And I think that goes with a lot of the decisions that went in that game as well.
Well, again, it's about a lack of collective responsibility, isn't it? You know, again, it's there's no point in having referees and lines officials there if they're not going to have any cohesion. I mean, do they even talk to each other? I mean, I don't know whether they've got earpieces in with them so that they can communicate, but to me, it just doesn't feel like they talk to each other all that often. And half the time, they're at odds on what the right decision is anyway. But you're right.
Earpieces, but I don't know whether they're functional ones or whether they're just there for a placeholder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't rule anything out these days. But yeah, look, so on a general point, we don't like. I'm pretty sure we don't like talking about referees, but we've got to get rid of it. We've got. Sorry.
You have to talk about referees at this stage.
You can't not, can you? You can't, and especially, I mean, one of the things I said when we got promoted from League One is, actually, I think the referees might be better in the Championship, and if anything, they're worse. They're genuinely worse than League One. And I never thought I'd be even probably 10 games into last season. I was looking at it going, these officials are still shit. They're worse, you know. And I mean, the ones in League One, you know, I mean, they've at least got the reason that I suppose they're not former Premier, well, for the most part, not former Premier League refs who relied on VAR to bail them out of things or whatnot. But like, you look at Jared Gillett. I mean, he got dropped, I think, from the Premier League, and then how come all of a sudden we're stuck with him? You know, what message does that send? Oh, the Championship doesn't matter, so you can just go ref there for a bit. Like, it does matter. For us and Boro, I would imagine that the aim is to try and get promoted this season. And what happens if at the end of the season we miss out on the top two, well, say top two by a point, for example? I don't think we'll get in the top two, by the way. But I mean, the point is, if you miss out on that for by a point, and this game could have affected that, you know. But again, I just wish we could get rid of this culture where it's again, like I said before, it's a criminal offence punishable by ridicule if you end up daring to question the referee as a fan. You know, you can say the results shouldn't matter. You know. Oh yeah, one of you two might want to talk. I'm blubbering here.
We'll move on.
I'm too annoyed. I'm really too annoyed.
Yeah, we'll move on because this could go on for probably about 5 hours. I think.
Would.
I think the worst part about it is that it's on the front of an international break, which sick of them. Boring. Hate it.
You got 2 weeks to stew on this. Brilliant.
Yeah. Just international football just needs to get in the bin. Especially these games. I don't even know what they are. Is it friendly? Is it qualified? I don't know. But
what a contrast, because I think before the last international break we beat Southampton like 1-0, and then now we're going in.
I know it's one or the other. This is the thing. I hate losing games for an international break.
I mean, you don't want an international break after a win because you've got momentum. You don't want an international break after a loss because you're going to dwell on it. So just get rid of them.
Draw.
Bin them.
Just get a draw. That's it. Just draw the game.
Could be that. But it is a national break, whatever you think of that. I'm telling you now, it's shit. But next game, Stoke. Daniel obviously not going to be there. Well, he'd be there, but he'll not be playing. Ekwa might be back.
We need him to be back, Mike.
Longest dead leg injury in the history of football, I think. He's been out for about 3 weeks.
Was it QPR he went off?
I think it was start of the QPR game he went off, and it's a dead leg.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's 3 weeks. That's one of the things that I think that if we had to get anyone sent off yesterday, that's the one position you don't want to have anyone sent off because
especially with Evans injured, Matete injured,
Exactly,
injured.
Poor Joe
so,
was
I mean,
just.
if Eck was out, then what the hell do we do?
You're playing two attacking midfielders in all the midfield is what we do.
The only other thing I could think of that you could probably do is put O'Nien in midfield and then have like Jensen Stilt with Ballard at the back, which granted presents its own risk.
Even that doesn't work because with Huggins now injured.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, what other options have we got at fullback? I mean, I know Elise is back.
I mean, I think if you would do that, you'd have Sealed at fullback, Triantis and Ballard. In there. But
what's the status on like Sirkin as well? Is another one. Bradley Dack's been out for a couple.
It seems like the injuries that we have were at the time. I'm fairly sure, especially Eck, were labelled as pretty short-term injuries, and seems to have been the age.
And it seems to get to medium term.
You would think probably for him, with that sort of injury, knowing that we're just about to enter an international break, I can see the reasoning of just playing it extra safe for a lot of these players. Let's just get to the international break. Yes, it sucks to lose 4-0, but like look at the table. I mean, we're sitting fourth right now.
Still had a very good start to the season,
which is pretty good.
Yeah. But anyway, the next game, Stoke. Alex Neil's Stoke, to be particular. Whether it is still Alex Neil's Stoke come the end of that international break. Probably up in the air at the moment.
Michael
I don't think they're doing particularly
well. To be honest, we'll find out in the next few days whether it's going to be, because if they're going to sack him, they're going to do it probably at the start of the international break, aren't they? Because they want.
Well, you'd think so, but I think we've done it in the past where.
Personally, but I could be wrong.
Did we not do that in the past where we sacked a manager like in the last few days of an international break? I'm sure we did.
I don't know. I mean,
it made no sense.
I mean, anything's. But when we sacked Lee Johnson, we took like 10 weeks to find a replacement. So anything's possible in football. But yeah.
But that's the next game. If you want a good luck start, I think last time we lost by a 4-goal margin. We then won 1-0, which was obviously actually a defeat to Stoke, followed by a win at Norwich, and then a defeat against Sheffield United as well after that. But it is Stoke. It is an away game, which again, like we keep saying, probably favours Sunderland. Stoke under pressure, Alex Neil under pressure. They need to win. They should probably come out and try and win the game, which again favours Sunderland because it allows players like Clark, Roberts, whoever else might play the space to get in behind and create or produce something to turn the game in Sunderland's favour. But early predictions for that game, Michael.
I'm trying to right. If Alex Neil's still there, I think we get beat. Unfortunately, I just think it's because. It's not because I think Stoke are better than us. It's because of him. It's because of Alex Neil. And I know we said, and the last time we faced Stoke, I said, Alex Neil's under pressure, really get at them, and we lost 5-1. So I'm going to try and go into the mindset that we're going to lose, and if we beat him, it's a bonus. But yeah, the thing is, Alex Neil, we know how pragmatic he is, don't we? We know how he's going to look at Sunderland's weaknesses. If he's smart, he knows the fact that we're light in centre midfield. So I think Stoke will probably try to come out and win the game. One thing is for certain, we have got to defend much better than we did against Middlesbrough. I know we had 10 men, but I think defensively we fell well short of the standard that we are definitely capable of. Yeah. So I'll go, right, again, the reverse psychology train continues. I'll go 1-0 to Stoke if Alex Neil's still there. If Alex Neil isn't there, 3-1 Sunderland.
Yeah. I think there's actually another similarity to the last time that I just mentioned there about the 4-goal deficit. We lost different games, but we lost 5-1 to Stoke, 4-goal deficit. Then we won against Norwich, which is in 2 games' time. And then we lost against a team that were expected to be promoted. And of course, after Stoke, our next game is Leicester. So a little bit.
Well, put it this way: the next 3, I think we the last 3 games, the 3 games following that Stoke, I think it was a win at Norwich, lost to Sheffield United, and it was a draw against Luton. So if that's the case, then we're going to beat Stoke, lose to Leicester, and draw with Norwich. If you want to believe in that.
Yeah. We'll see about that. Kyle, predictions, quick. Go.
Yeah, I'll go 1-1. It'll be Patrick Roberts' goal. He finally gets off, opens his account
for his first goal of the season.
And then their goal will be a Luke O'Nien flying header own goal.
Interesting. We'll see. But of course, that game is in 2 weeks' time or something, a long time away, unfortunately. But we'll have a podcast out around the time of that game to talk about what happens during that. Potentially look at, Elijah Mayenda for the first time. Obviously, he was injured about half an hour after signing for us, and he's been out since. He could be involved. Elise could be back. Echo could be back. In terms of Everton's, Matete and Cirque, and I don't think they'll be back. Cirque and potentially Evans, definitely not. I don't really know how long Mateta is out for, but a few people will be back for that game. We'll get something out to talk about what happens during it, but until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.